Hi, everyone. Good evening, and welcome back to what's going to be a humdinger of a live show this evening. So, wherever you're joining me from, you're very, very welcome. We've got a couple of great guests coming up, and we've got an incredibly topical subject to be discussing. And sort of at an angle to that, slightly adjacent to that, just to kick off with, just a gentle reminder to everybody watching this, whichever stream you're on, that we do have. I've got a live show coming up at the end of this month, January the 30th. I've got Ben Habib, who we might talk about actually in this, Mr. Ben Habib, Baroness Kate Hoey, and a few others as well that have got some really interesting views. And we're going to be getting together in London on the 30th. If you can possibly come along, please do so. I need your support. And if you can do that, I would be much appreciative of that. Okay, right. So getting to the main topic, the topic du jour. And well, let me bring in my two guests first of all. So can I bring in Paul Thorpe and Richard Inman?
Hi, evening, Paul. David. How you doing? Hi, lovely to see you. Evening, Richard.
Yeah. Evening, Paul. I still end up on the bottom. Even on a different show, I end up on the bottom tier.
There you go.
And just like that, you see, on the David Vance show, we're all on an equality agenda here. You know, we're all for that. So anyway,
diversity, equity, and inclusion, just for YouTube. Because remember, this is streaming to YouTube. We're all over that. We're all over that.
Yeah. I don't think we're not streaming to Facebook. I think we're not doing that one. So, although
we will be soon.
Zuckerberg saying he's no more censorship whatsoever, except he doesn't mean that for Europe and the UK. He just means that for the US. Actually, he's complete hypocrite. But yeah, exactly, Paul. But anyway, listen. Thanks everybody joining us. See you all there. A warm welcome to you. So, you know, Richard and myself met up in Belfast there about 4 or 5 days ago, whatever it was. It seems like it was about a year ago, because just at that point, the news bomb had exploded when Elon Musk tweeted out, "Free Tommy Robinson." And we were just saying, weren't we, Richard, at the time when we met? I mean, this is kind of amazing because no one's seen it coming. But boy, was it a moment.
I think what we said, I think what we said, David, it's not going to get any bigger than this. And boy, were we wrong.
We were right, yeah, predictably wrong yet again on my part. Yeah. So
this is the British political scene Netflix series season 1.
It is. Yeah. It really is. It's the first episode. You know the way they always make the first episode really, really spectacular. And you're going, I've got to watch another one to see what happens next. Yeah. It's like you get up in the morning. I've got to go onto Twitter to see what Elon said last night. You know.
Well, this is the thing. So I mean, I'm sure you both would agree that, and we're going to get into the whole Tommy aspect to that. But just generally, Elon Musk just has absolutely shaken up, you know, British politics. Keir Starmer under, you know, sustained attack. Jess Phillips crying up her sleeve. Apparently her life's been put in jeopardy just because Elon Musk spoke his mind. And it's been, I've got to say, guys, I've loved it. I mean, just the general tweets coming from Musk are just off the scale.
I think the first thing that I want to say is that I am ashamed to the core that it's taken an American to wake up the British political system. Where, I've said it before, where are the men and women of still in our political establishment? Where is their courage? Why haven't none of those managed to step forward? We will see them start to come forward, because what's going to happen is they're going to start understanding that their number is up, and they're going to start getting fear and FOMO. So we will now start to see people who would normally just be quiet and just keep it down the back door. They're going to start stepping forward for fear of missing out, or worse.
Because
there's a lot of people got a lot to answer for.
It's already happening, Paul. I mean, we're seeing the likes of Robert Jenrick. And remember, Robert Jenrick decided to set MI5 and whatever it is in the PSNI special branch on a little protest outside a hotel because our local MP, Stephen Farage, got upset about it. So this is the Robert Jenrick that now is more right wing than Nick Tenconi. I mean, this is who we're dealing with. It's nonsense. But
I do think, Paul, you make a good point. I think Musk has liberated people in a way, and it is a pity it takes the guy a billionaire who owns the biggest social media platform in the world, arguably, to set us free. But I mean, even the language that we can use is now, for example, with regard to the so-called grooming gangs and all of that, we can now call a spade because Elon has called it a spade. So I just think it's been amazing. It's been absolutely amazing to behold. And like you said, Richard, I mean, we thought, well, you know, him jumping in on the Tommy Robinson issue was a thing, but let's get into that a wee bit. So basically, as you know, I think it was around about the first of the year, wasn't it? The 1st or 2nd of Jan or whatever. Elon tweeted free Tommy Robinson, which was an earthquake, a political earthquake, because the British establishment not interested. Like, they have no interest in, as long as Tommy Robinson's behind bars, they were happy. So that was a seismic moment, wasn't it?
Absolutely massive. I mean, he didn't just tweet it, David. He pinned it to his feed. So that was at the top of his feed for 24 hours, I think. Yes. And there was also, he'd been asking questions before that. He'd been saying, why is he in prison? What's this guy done? I don't understand what's going on. So he'd been questioning the whole thing. And I think, I mean, me and Paul's talked about this, but I think what we've got to realize about Elon Musk, you don't get to be the richest man on the planet. And coming from fairly humble beginnings, by being a dozer, he picks things up like that. And he makes decisions very, very quickly. And I think his intuition has been absolutely on the money on this. And the way that and listen, I mean, obviously we've got to consider Tommy's family and all this, and obviously they're going through goodness knows what, as all these vile accusations have been thrown against them by the mainstream media. But the reaction of Starmer, of ITV, the BBC, even GB News and Talk TV, and do you know what, David? They've all shown the true colours, shown themselves. Especially the right-wing channels like Talk TV and GB News. We're never getting on them anyway, so there's no point in trying to be nice about them. They are absolutely fake news. They are frauds. They're not looking out for the rights of people on the right. They're looking out for their future careers. And I want to name one individual. That fella Harwood. Can't remember his first name. The guy looks. Tom Harwood. He looks like he should. He bears absolutely no resemblance to the other Tommy Robinson. He's completely the opposite to him. He is spineless. He looks like, I'm not suggesting anybody takes anabolic steroids, but I think that man definitely needs some testosterone. That's all I'm going to say about it. He needs a massive dose of testosterone, and he needs to go to the gym and eat at a punch bag instead of coming out with his weasel words about Tommy. What a snake! What a vile, disgusting little snake that man is. Anyway, that's the rant about.
No, well, there's been no shortage of snakes, because see the way it happened, Paul, was so Elon, you know, pins the tweet, and all of a sudden the world erupts, and in sort of in parallel with that, Elon had been very, very supportive of reform, and I think, Paul, you are a supporter of reform. And so, well, and we'll get there. So like, it all looked quite good, but then obviously, because there was all this talk of Elon might give money to reform and all of that, the media then went to Nigel, and this is where Nigel comes into it. And Nigel essentially washed his hands off Tommy Robinson, which people who remember him in UKIP would, as you would, Richard, can't be really that surprised. But I mean, Paul, how did you feel about it when basically Nigel's first response was to say, no, we can't be associating with that chap, and when I go to the inauguration, I'll educate Elon. Well, didn't work out that way, did it, Paul?
Well, my initial reaction to that was that Nigel has the street nous of a goldfish. Because if he thinks he's going to outsmart Elon Musk, if he thinks he's going to jump on a plane in business and fly to wherever he's going to go, Washington, and meet the world's richest man with the one of the highest IQs that you could ever wish for, and educate him, I mean, who does he think he is? What on earth was he thinking to say that live on TV? Yep. The one thing about Nigel is that for all of his education, he hasn't learned when to zip it.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly the point, Richard. I mean, clearly Elon Musk is super smart guy, and he clearly researches stuff and draws his opinions. So this suggestion, as Paul said, that Nigel Farage is going to go over there and he's going to, have a few words in Elon's ear about Tommy, and everything was going to be sorted. It's unbelievable poor judgment.
It's massive. I mean, and it shows
arrogance.
Well, I mean, here's the important thing, and there's a very important strategic point in this. And the strategic point is that what Elon has done in one tweet has, and listen, the establishment are reeling, because what this has shown is that Nigel was the establishment candidate. He is the Manchurian, the Manchurian or whatever they call it, candidate. The Manchurian. He's the one that's been planted by the enemy in the right, with people thinking, oh, he's the real deal. He's not the real deal. And as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, he hasn't been the real deal since about 2016. I'm not going to say any more than that. But the reality is that what Elon did in that one tweet was brought that to the surface, and it hasn't filtered through the system yet. The news, the news cycle is probably going to be about 6 weeks behind reality. And I believe that I'm going to make a prediction, and I'm not very good at predictions, so if I get it wrong, I'm not going to be embarrassed. But I'm going to say that Nigel Farage will not be leader of the Reform Party in a year's time. That's my prediction, that he's going to be gone. And either the Reform Party will have exploded into fragmentation, or Nigel will not be there. And I'm hoping Zia Youssef and Richard Tice won't be there either, because then it makes it an interesting and obviously I'm a UKIP member. I'm on the NEC UKIP, so I don't have any skin in the game here. But as an observer, that's why I'm predicted.
Well, but you do, Paul, because you have been a supporter of reform. So I'm interested in your reactions.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say, for a man that went on TV this morning and talked about someone having a criminal record, a list as long as your arm, I've got a list as long as my arm, probably a bit longer actually, of people who have told me that over the years they fell out with Nigel Farage. So what I'm going to do tomorrow is I'm going to name that list of people that have told me they've fallen out with Nigel over the years. What was my reaction? Well, extreme disappointment, because as Richard well knows, and this story's getting a bit long in the tooth now, but before the general election, I was approached by Reform and seen as someone as a moderate voice, which I like to think I am. I always like to try and be fair. And we kind of had a gentleman's agreement. Nothing spectacular, but there'd be no bad mouthing Tommy. And in return, Tommy would call for his supporters to back Reform. Now, I made that request to Tommy, and within 20, 30 minutes of me making that request, he made a video, put it on all of his platforms. It had, I don't know, 500,000 views like they normally get when he does, and the rest is history. And then when we get to after the election, all of a sudden the people that I've been speaking to weren't picking up the phone. Now, I call that backstabbing.
Can I jump in there? Because there was a certain person, I'm not going to name him, but there was a certain person that told us specifically that there would be meetings between Team Tommy and Reform. We were told that and pretty much told that Nigel and Tommy would be in a room together. That's what we were told by certain individuals. Now, either they were lying, they were overreaching, or the people that gave them that information were lying and overreaching. But the upshot of it doesn't matter. It shows. And I'm annoyed with myself, Paul, to be honest with you, because as you know, I was again. I mean, David, I said on Paul's channel and I said on my own channel, I said, guys, I says, if we vote for Reform in big numbers, we are going to allow a massive Labour landslide majority. And I kind of got caught up in the hysteria about Reform. I hadn't rejoined UKIP at that time. Yeah. So I promoted Reform as well, against my better judgment. I mean, because, and I look back on that now and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to go with my gut next time and I'm not going to do that. And the reality is that not only did everybody voting Reform give Nigel a massive boost in his ego and get 5 MPs into Parliament, it also guaranteed a Labour landslide. Let's not forget that. And I'm not calling people out for voting for reform, because I know why they did it, because they were so disgusted with the insidious, vile, left-wing, wishy-washy, limp-wristed, I'm on it tonight, Tory party. I mean, just,
Stop
sitting on the fence, Richard. Tell us what you think.
I know. I'm being
what we got to remember. What we got to remember here is that Nigel Farage today hasn't only thrown Tommy under a bus, he's also thrown inadvertently, but pretty directly, really. He's also thrown James McMurdoch under a bus as well.
And others.
And others. James McMurdoch is now under the spotlight because he has a criminal record with an issue with a woman many years ago. Look, he served his time or paid the price or did whatever he had to do. I don't know what the punishment was. And we move on, right? But not by bringing all this up, Nigel's opened up a can of worms that he can't control. And I'm just amazed that he didn't have the intelligence to realise what was in front of him.
There is a difference. There's a difference between James and Tommy. The difference is Tommy has no conviction for violence against women. That was a lie. That was a bare-faced lie. Farage has not apologised. And I don't know whether we can crowdfund a libel action, but I mean, I would say there could be a case there. There could be a very strong case.
It's a 100% case.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, talking of libel actions, I've got a little clip I want to play for you both. You probably have seen it. I dare say you have. But this took place, I think, this morning on I think it was Good Morning Britain or whatever. But it featured Camilla Toomey, whatever she's called. And I think if we can just bring it up and just want to share it with the audience. So because there's an establishment assault on the character of a couple of people. Elon Musk is one and Tommy Robinson is the other. And I don't think that's a coincidence, right? So I wonder, Jed, can we get this playing?
Elon Musk had to go at Nigel Farage because Nigel Farage has refused to bring Tommy Robinson into the fray of reform. Tommy Robinson has obviously been vocal about this issue, although therein lies the contradiction here, because for all of his genius, wisdom and wealth, Elon Musk doesn't quite seem to understand who Tommy Robinson is and what he represents, which is a misunderstanding that is sometimes seen across the pond, Americans and Canadians thinking that Tommy Robinson is some kind of, misunderstood folklore figure, when in fact he's a convicted criminal and white supremacist who hasn't really done much. In fact, he's currently serving a sentence for contempt of court for nearly disrupting the proper investigation of a child sex abuse gang. So in all of that, one asks oneself the question, should any of us be listening to Elon Musk? Probably not.
Well, I would ask the question. Camilla, totally, probably not. Right, you go first, Richard, then you go.
I hadn't heard the end of that where she's completely, let's just give her the benefit of the doubt and say maybe she's confused. She looks like an elderly woman. Maybe she's a little bit confused. But I don't think that's the case. I think she's just barefaced lied. Tommy is not in prison. His prison sentence has nothing to do with a grooming case that has been disrupted. And in fact, when he went to prison for contempt of court in 2018, because I was meant to meet him on the Sunday, he got arrested and locked up on the Friday. When that happened, the verdict had already been. They'd been found guilty. It was sentencing.
She's talking about two separate cases.
Well, Paul, but the thing is, listen to me. This is important. The one that they're saying that he was disrupting, that was a lie. He wasn't disrupting that case. The verdicts had been given. They were found guilty. They were going for sentencing. Tommy's question was this: how do you feel about the verdict, lads? That's what he said. That's what he's arrested for. Now, and this is where lawfare and the twisting of the legal process. Remember, that was under the Tories. That wasn't under this scummy communist lot. That was under the supposed conservatives. He was innocent then. He's innocent now, and he shouldn't be in prison. And those journalists should be advocating on his behalf, because what's that old poem? First they came for the Jews, then they came for the gypsies, and then they came for me, and there was no one to speak up. Those journalists should actually read that poem from the Second World War.
But hang on a second, Paul. Tommy's a white supremacist. She just said that. And did you notice they all were nodding along with her? White supremacist.
I was gonna say, had someone farted in the room, because they're all pulling their they're all doing their best to pull their most offended faces. I mean, like, what is wrong with them? Look, the mere suggestion, I can only speak for myself, but I know Richard feels the same. The mere suggestion that I would associate with a white supremacist is as ridiculous and as outrageous as it could possibly become. Yeah. Some of my best friends in this movement are not white.
Yep. It's been like that from the beginning, Paul, hasn't it? I mean, one thing about Tommy Robinson is pretty clear, that to a large degree he's colorblind. So it's kind of...
He's totally colorblind, David. Look, here's the thing, right? I'm going to tell you something. I have been to demonstrations, back when we used to have demonstrations. I've been to demonstrations where the real far right have turned up. And let's just say they've gone away lesser men than they came. I'm not going to say any more than that. They've gone away lesser men than they came. They got put in their box, packed up, and moved on very, very forcibly. I've seen that happen on a number of occasions at Tommy events and Tommy demonstrations. We have less tolerance for the real far right, and we do more to stand against them than anyone, including Farage. For what Farage has done is actually fed the far right by excluding people that are working class patriots from joining his party. So they go, well, we can't join Reform, we can't join UKIP as it was then, so we'll have to go and join the BNP or the National Front or whatever it is. And we've lost people. Don't get me wrong, they're stupid to go to those parties anyway, because if you have an ounce of sense, you wouldn't join that sort of scum. But the reality of it is that Tommy has done more to fight against the far right than Hope Not Hate, than stand up to racism, unite against fascists. Tommy's fought the real fascists and the real Nazis. And Farage has done exactly what, and Camilla Tominley...
And when they've been in front of him.
Toe-to-toe. You know, and this is what people don't understand. And Tommy's got more balls than any of them put together. And, I am, there's some very good things that's happened over the last few days, but I am absolutely disgusted with Nigel Farage. I would love Nigel Farage to fall on his sword tomorrow and resign, because I think he really needs to go, but he won't. He'll hang on until he's pushed out.
Well, we'll talk about Nigel a little bit specifically now, because Elon came out very clear, free Tommy Robinson, and then Nigel basically made it very clear on TV that he would have nothing to do with Tommy Robinson. And then Nigel, again, this was the amazing bit, as you remember, Richard, he then reposted, again, free Tommy Robinson. And that was the second blast. And then, for good measure, and this was the explosive bit, he tweeted that Nigel Farage didn't seem to be the right kind of person to lead Reform. So, Paul, can I ask you, when you saw that tweet, which was amazing, wherever you stand, it was just an amazing tweet. What did you think, Paul?
I tell you what I thought. I thought, wow, we've all been vindicated, because a lot of people have doubted what we say. I mean, Richard and I, and obviously yourself as well, we're fortunate enough to have some inside information. We perhaps know a little bit more than your average viewer, because we get to hear things. And because we're gentlemen, we don't always repeat the things that we hear. Right. I don't want to repeat things about anyone that is not particularly tasteful, and I certainly wouldn't make up lies about someone. So what did I think when I first saw that? I thought, victory for free speech, victory for decency, victory for the victims, victory for Tommy, and victory for everyone that has stood by his side, stuck to our guns, and speak out and believe in what we believe in.
And Richard, to you, when you saw that tweet from Elon that Nigel Farage doesn't seem to be the right man to lead Reform, and I know you're UKIP, but I mean, reaction?
Oh, I mean, I was literally rolling on the floor in my living room, laughing my head off. My wife's like, "What's happened?" I mean, I think she thought I'd had some sort of breakdown. I was rolling on the floor laughing, because It was. I mean, you'll be, and I said this when I was on Paul's channel. You'll be familiar with the story, David, of Esther, the book of Esther, and Haman, the wicked, scheming politician who tried to have Mordecai hung, and he built this massive set of gallows outside the king's palace, and the scheme looked like it was working out, and he was just about to get Mordecai killed, and all the Jews were going to be massacred. And Esther pipes up and says, "Oh, actually, I'm Jewish," and everything turns around, and the king loves his wife, and poor old Haman gets hung on his own gallows. And what's happened, by the way, I haven't read that story for a long time, so if it's wrong and anybody's a biblical scholar, they'll pull me up on it. But anyway, what's happened is Nigel has been hung on his own gallows. Now, what's actually happening with Nigel at the minute? He's standing on the trap door, and he just hasn't had the drop yet. He thinks his sentence has been commuted, but no, Nigel, you have hung yourself on your own gallows. You're gone. You're gone. It's all over.
Can I just?
Yep.
Oh, sorry, David. No, can I just say? I tell you what I've noticed here with these public schoolboy types. They're very well educated academically. They're on a different planet to people like myself. I don't have a great vocabulary, but I tell you what. People that went to school in South London would never, or North London or East London or wherever, Yorkshire, ordinary working class lads, we would never make the fundamental mistakes of taking people for fools and thinking we can get away with it.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is this, is that you can't kid all the people all the time. And that's what he's been trying to do. And what surprised me is that Nigel didn't have the nous to understand that he wasn't going to get away with it and there'll be no repercussions. This is another thing that politicians don't understand. When I grew up, if I put my big mouth in it somewhere, I was going to get a clump round the ear or a fist in the face.
Yeah.
There were repercussions.
Consequences.
These people have consequences. These people do not know what the word consequence, they can't even spell the word consequence, let alone understand what it means. Now they're learning.
But then it got worse. Like this is where this has been so amazing. So there was that response from Musk. Then Nigel came back basically saying something like, "Oh dear, this is a bit of a to-do. But we can just agree to disagree." He said that. Then he came out, which I thought was, as you both said, if you're going to patronize Elon Musk, I think you're in trouble. Do you know what I mean? You just need common sense to understand that. I would not dare patronize such a person. But Nigel said that, and then the next day he came out and he said, "Well, actually, reform doesn't really need the money from Elon Musk anyway. We can go it alone." And now he's come out subsequently and said, it's being reported anyway, that he would like to make up, I think the expression is mend. Yeah, Richard, here you go. He wants to mend the fence with Elon Musk in 2 weeks' time. Do any of you think that's possible? What do you think about that?
Well, I think Musk's going to offer him a job as a test pilot on the next SpaceX probe to the red planet. I think Mars could become the first astronaut to go to Mars, because, well, let's get it right, he's been behaving like a total space cadet, so he fits the job description already. So I think he's going to be blasting off sometime in the summer from Cape Canaveral.
The danger here, the only danger here that I can see is Donald Trump, because Trump and Farage do go back quite a long way.
You do. Yep. That's a good point.
Now, if Donald Trump gets in Elon's ear, it's possible that we might see some kind of reconciliation, albeit probably a temporary and uncomfortable one. But what I would say, that even if Elon does do a bit of a U-turn and decides to put Nigel back in his pocket, I don't think it really matters that much long term, because we now know what Elon's real thoughts are. The job has been done. The cat is out of the bag, so to speak. So that job is done. I tell you what, if I was Elon Musk, and who am I to offer Elon Musk any advice, right? I don't want to go down the Nigel Farage route, right? But the hope is, right? If the hope is that Elon Musk might, nip into his tin change that he's got laying on the side of his crypto box at the end of his bed.
Yeah.
Pull a couple of tokens out and acquire Reform UK Limited.
Yeah, because it's a limited company. I mean, that's a good. Well, the strangest one of the. I mean, the weird things about Reform is it's not essentially a political party. Strictly speaking,
It's a limited company.
It's a limited company. And Nigel did say last September that would be changed. But as far as I'm aware, it's exactly nothing has changed.
I think the difference is, without going too much into the structure of UKIP, but I think the difference is the way UKIP works is members of the NEC are directors of the entity, right? So if you're on the NEC, you're a director, and there's like 15 or whatever it is, you know.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not going to go into any more on that, but I mean, you could go and find it if you want in Company's House. But I think the difference is with Nigel's setup, I think he is possibly the only director. Maybe Tice is a director as well, but they have so they have sole control over that entity now. And this is what Ben Habib, and let's give Ben Habib all the credit in this, because there's one man that's come out of this like a shining light.
Yeah,
and it's our good friend Ben Habib, and he's a great friend to Northern Ireland, David.
Absolutely.
A real quiet hero, because he came and stood in Northern Ireland on platforms with loyalists and unionists, and he stood up for this country. He didn't have to do that, David, and that's why I've always had a massive amount of respect. And he is actually one of my political heroes, believe it or not. I think he's absolutely superb.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I have to say, I mean, I'm delighted that he's coming to join me on January the 30th, and I hope everybody watching will come along.
Yeah.
Ben needs support, because he's, you talk about you take an easy route, you take a hard route. Ben did not stand in an easy constituency, as you probably both know. It was really tough for Ben, but he's a man of principle. He didn't just parachute into somewhere that was easy, He
could have won a seat. He could have won a seat very easily. Yeah, absolutely.
He could have, but he didn't. And everything, Ben, I mean, I got very sort of bad vibes whenever Nigel again went out of his way to character assassinate Ben Habib, who, Paul, in all my dealings with him, he's a gentleman. I mean, he plays it down the line. There's no corners to him. On all the issues, he's absolutely rock solid. And so I thought, Paul, it was weird that Nigel, why are you so vitriolic towards Ben? What has he ever done on you?
Well, I'll tell you what I think. I think he sussed him out. I mean, at the end of the day, you can see what sort of treatment anyone gets when they suss Nigel out. That's the way that it appears.
Yeah.
And that's the typical work of, frankly, a bit of a narcissist, in my opinion. I mean, that's the usual trait of someone that's a bit of, I'm not saying he is, but, it's a fairly common trait. I mean, what it appears, look, we've held our hand. Who are we, right? But they know of us. Don't worry about that. They're fully aware of who we are, what we do, who we are associated with it. We have held our hands out a dozen times. I have Nigel's telephone number. I messaged him a couple of weeks ago. Come on, Nigel, let's have a chat. No response.
No,
nothing.
I am aware of people that Nigel's been messaged quite a bit, Paul, in the past 48 hours. And I may have seen some of that stuff, but again, no response comes back. These are people who know Nigel really well and go back with Nigel. And I'm not sure, look, here's a question for you both. Is it just that some people will say, look, you're all being very unfair. Nigel Farage wants to become Prime Minister in 2029. He wants Reform to do really well. And any association with that Tommy Robinson, well, that's going to damage him irreparably with the mainstream media, and that's the argument, isn't it? So why is that wrong?
David, it's a fair argument, but it's an ignorant one also, because what we got to learn is that we got to take a leaf out of Donald Trump's book. He didn't win the US presidency for a second time by pandering and bowing to the left-wing mainstream media. He took them on head on. Yep. He would throw them out of press conferences. He would say, I'm not speaking to you. You're a traitor.
Well, absolutely.
And the people are sick and tired of wannabe politicians that never deliver.
Donald Trump didn't shy away from saying, right, we need mass deportations in day one, and that's going to happen. Nigel Farage, Richard, didn't want to talk. Well, actually, he ruled them out. It's even worse.
I mean, let's get it right. I mean, the only politician that is calling for mass deportations that's leading a political party at the minute is Nick Tenconi. Yeah. Nobody else is doing it. Nick's very, very, straight down the line about that. He says, I just want to get these people out. So the reality, I mean, I think the thing is this, it brings us full circle. It brings us back to what Elon said about Nigel. And it was very, very clear that Nigel is not the man for the job. Nigel is not going to, I mean, even if he won an election and got to be prime minister, he's not going to have the cojones to do what it takes to change this country and save this country. No. He does not have I mean, I remember seeing him after Brexit. And he went into the poll. If you remember, he came out of some meeting or other on the night of Brexit. He's like, I don't think we're going to win this.
He did. I always remember that. Yeah.
And here's an interesting thing, right? The day after, he made his little speech in College Green or whatever it was, and then he disappeared. He vanished. I mean, he didn't work out what we were going to do next. He didn't get involved in thinking, how do we make this work? He didn't get involved in really fighting for it. He disappeared for about 6 months or a year. He did exactly the same with UKIP. He did exactly the same with the Brexit Party. So, look, there's a lot there.
Yeah, well, there's the thing, the Brexit Party, because, again, I mean, I do remember that, Paul. I'm sure you do, back in 2016, that night when we all wanted to get Brexit.
Yeah.
And I was gobsmacked when Nigel basically, as you said, Richard, basically put his hands up and said, I don't think we're going to get it. And then we did. But it was so strange. And then it was so strange back in 2019 when we were going towards into the general election and the Brexit Party seemed to have momentum. And then again, that was pulled. I mean, if you look at it, Paul, that's serial behavior, isn't it?
It is. It's habitual behaviour, and at the end of the day, we're not seeing any change in pattern, are we? I don't think he'll last as long as Richard said, a year, didn't you, Richard?
Well, I said he won't be leader next year. I mean, that gives me a pretty big window, Paul.
Just in case it does, to be fair. I mean, that's like saying he's going to win between rounds 2 and 11, isn't it?
Something along those lines. That's about.
But I don't see, unless there's a dramatic shift, and who knows in this Netflix series of British politics.
Yeah.
Who knows what we're going to pick our phone up and see tweeted in 5 minutes, let alone tomorrow. But
yeah.
I don't think Elon Musk is finished yet. I think Elon Musk is just getting started.
Well,
and if he's the guy that I think he is, and I'm not predicting this, I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me that by the summer, Rupert Lowe and Ben Habib are leading reform. It wouldn't surprise me.
I mean, I've had lots of people tell me that's what the dream combination would be.
Absolutely.
And I have to say, I mean, I don't know Rupert Lowe personally. We followed each other for many years. And he's been, I have to say, Richard, he comes across to me as pretty solid. No corners to him. And he actually so much more solid than Nigel Farage, which is so weird. Because Nigel should be more solid than him, but that's not the way it works. And Ben Habib as well. I mean, there's some good. I think that would be a brilliant combination. What do you think, Richard?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree. And that would literally. I mean, it's like I said to Paul. I says, what's happened? This deck of cards been thrown up in the air, and it's coming down in slow motion. And we don't know where all those cards are going to land. We don't know where the Ace of Spades, the Queen of Hearts, we don't know where they're all going to go. And at the minute, what we're doing is we're just watching. But I think Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe would. I mean, the only thing I've got against Rupert is he voted for the euthanasia thing, which I don't like at all. But apart from that, I mean, he's played a blind in Parliament, and now that would scare the life out of the establishment, because I don't think either of those two guys can be bought. And the reality is, knowing Ben Habib like we know him, I mean, I knew him watching him from Northern Ireland when he was on those platforms, because I went to a lot of those meetings and stood in the crowd. And knowing him now personally, and Paul knows him a lot better than I know him, and I think you probably know him quite well as well, David. He is a man of absolute integrity. He's very sharp. Like, you see, you don't get to be a very wealthy man who runs a PLC by being a dozer. He's got incredible attention to detail. He doesn't make rash decisions, but he makes decisions. And politically, all of us on the right, from UKIP through to, I would say, 90% of the Reform membership and some Tories are politically aligned with Ben Habib and what he says. And that's exciting.
Can I make a point about Rupert Lowe? Can I make a point about Rupert Lowe? Well, one of the reasons that Rupert Lowe is the person that he is, I feel we shouldn't underestimate that he had over a decade as a chairman of a football club, which means that he had 10, 11, 12 years, whatever it was. I'm not quite sure. I think it was about 11 years in total, because he left once and then went back in, I believe. But when you've been in contact with the ordinary working class man at a football club for 10, 11, 12 years, you learn. You learn about the working class. You learn about their ways, their loves, their passion for their town, their city, their football club, their country. So Rupert Lowe has served a very good apprenticeship with the working class. Rupert Lowe is not look, I have no place sitting in a pub having a drink with Rupert Lowe. But I tell you what, I bet we could, because he's used to people like me. He's met a lot of me. He was chairman of a football club that is supported by people like me and Richard and yourself. So that's a big advantage for Rupert Lowe, which is, you know, the only chairman that Nigel's ever been was probably the local bowls club.
Yep. I mean, I think there's a lot of talent there. I mean, obviously, there's good. It's like anything. It's going to be like that Charlton Heston thing that he said when he was head of the NRA. He says, you know, he held up the gun in the air and he says, "You'll have to prise this out of my cold, dead hand." Do you remember that?
Yeah,
way back in the 90s, right? And
I'm too
that's
young to remember that. Yeah.
I know, Paul. I know.
Yeah, I've only heard rumors of it.
No, you just can't remember it because you were partying too hard. You know? but there's a point there, and it's this. Nigel is going to be like he's going to fight like a cat in a bag. He's going to be going ballistic to try and keep his paws and his claws into the heart of reform and what reform stands for. So it may be as well. And again, I'm not making this a prediction because I think everything's so up in the air. We don't know, but it may be that reform actually goes and something else takes its place, and that's a possibility as well. We just don't know. That's the truth of the matter at the minute.
One of the best things I've heard is Ben Habib when he said quite a while ago that reform needs reformed, and I thought that was so astute because it does in so many ways. You know, structurally to make it a proper democratic party and stuff like that. But here's a question for both of you: do you think, in the event of a change of leader, if there was, do you think there could be a rapprochement between reform and Tommy Robinson?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Because I think that the reality is, I'm just going to turn it off. The reality
always a professional.
I know. Sorry, guys. I thought it was your phone, Paul.
Yeah, always a pro.
Yeah. So I mean, so you think, Richard, that
yeah. I mean, what I think could happen, there could be a sort of amalgam. I mean, if reform is standing on the same ground as UKIP, and on and some of the right wing Tories come across, and Ben's involved, all of these loose ends could be tied up and tied together, and you know, so you end up with a mega party that has everybody in it that believes what we believe. Because at the minute, look, here's the thing. Let's get it right. People in UKIP believe what people in Reform believe, right? But the problem that you've got is because of Nigel, it's impossible for those two entities to even think about getting together in any sort of coalition. I'm not talking about, you know, so there's so much to play for. So I think if Nigel steps back and Zaire Youssef goes and sets up another business, loss-making business that makes a lot of money. If Zaire goes and does whatever he normally does for a living, and Richard Tice joins the Tory party, then reform could be reformed, and it could be a real force to do what needs to be done, because the job is so massive. You know, we talked about this the other day, David, didn't we? The institutions need to be ripped to pieces and put back together again. The civil service, the police, probably the hierarchy of the military now. the media, the BBC. The Quangos need to go. The judicial system needs to be reformed. There is such a massive job. The constitutional settlement needs to be looked at again. There's such a massive job that needs to be done to save this country. That we can only do it if we have an extremely strong party that gets a massive majority that won't be overturned for years.
Can I say?
Yeah, Paul, over to you. Yeah.
Sorry, David, it's your show, mate.
No, I wanted to hear what you thought. I mean, do you think there could be a rapprochement between a reform and Tommy?
I don't think that's actually necessary, particularly, David. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what I think will work well. I mean, I worked at a professional football club, a Premiership football club, for 4 years, and how it worked there, and it worked very well, is that you had the board, you had the chairman, you had the board of directors and all the hierarchy, but then you had the supporters club. Now, every now and again, now the board ran the football club, and ultimately the chairman had the final say. And then you went right down to the manager, the coaches, etc. But they all worked under the board, they all worked under the chairman. But even the chairman himself, every now and again, would say to me, Paul, we need to have a chat with the supporters. Things aren't right. There's a bit of discontent in the stands.
Yep.
There's a few cries for the manager to leave coming from the terraces or whatever. And then we would have a meeting with the supporters club, and the supporters club would have their input. They would have a chairman themselves, and that's how it would work. Were they officially affiliated with the football club? No. They're a separate entity.
Good point. Yeah,
they're a bunch of supporters. So there's no. If we need to avoid the poison of the mainstream media, and I don't want to be contradictory in that I've said we should tackle them head on, but if we need to avoid the poison of the mainstream media, then you have what we would hope we was going to have before, a covert fan club.
And actually, it's an interesting point, because in one of his in one of his responses to Elon Musk, when Musk was showing his clear support for Tommy, it's like Nigel was trying to answer a different question to the one that and Ben Habib pointed this out than that which Elon was saying. You don't have to be politically joined at the hip. Actually, with Tommy Robinson, I mean, this is the thing that takes me back to the summer of last year, when we all stood in Trafalgar Square, that huge crowd, and there was such a good mood about things. And this was even after the general election, if you recall. And all I could see was a sea of patriots. That's all I could see. And probably, truth be told, the majority were probably reform voters. Probably, I'm guessing, but I think that
99%. I would have thought.
Yeah, that's right. And so therefore, it's like such a slap in the face then. And this is the thing. I think this is the thing that maybe, I don't know if Nigel fully understands this, or maybe he does, but it's such a slap in the face. And there's a cynical calculation, I put it to you, Richard, that says, listen, you Tommy Robinson lot, come the next election, you're going to have a simple choice: Tory, Labour, or Reform. So we're going to get you votes anyway, and we don't have to pander. Would you agree with it? Is that the thing?
David, we've seen the playbook on that with the loyalist community in Northern Ireland, the DUP. The DUP took the loyalist community for granted for years, and I think the DUP is going to be in for a shock pretty soon, and I think Reform could be in for a big shock as well, because all it takes is an upstart party to form and Tommy get involved with, or UKIP gets Tommy involved, or whatever, and then Reform have got a big problem, because not me, but a lot of those people in that crowd. I mean, I obviously, living in Northern Ireland, it's a totally different voted. We can't really vote for Reform over here. But in that crowd, I would say probably 90% of the people in that crowd that vote would be, and there'll be others that don't vote. And of course, this is the trick that Nigel's missing. He doesn't realise that if he'd, it's too late for him. David, I don't think there's any way back for Nigel. Even if he apologises, he kind of made a mealy-mouthed statement tonight on his show where he said, well, maybe Tommy shouldn't be in prison. Well, where did that come from? 5 minutes ago, you were saying he was Al Capone's woman abusing brother. I mean,
Fred,
and now
he was Fred West this morning.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's it. He was demonizing, and so I don't think there's any way back for Nigel. So it's a question of, can we get the structure in place on the right? And here's the thing, David, I'm gonna, and Paul will think I'm like a broken record. The pledge is a mechanism to do that, because what the pledge does, it gets people to sign up to a set of principles that are basically ideologically driven. So UKIP can sign the pledge. Everybody in Reform should be able to sign the pledge. Right-wing Tories should be able to sign the pledge, and everybody that's not affiliated should be able to sign the pledge. And that's the way that we can bring people together in a very cohesive way. And then, because of the way it's set up and the stuff that we're doing in the background, I mean, I don't know if I told you this the other day, but we're in the process. We've already built a database with all the MPs in the UK, every single one of them. We've got all their email addresses. We've got their majorities. We know exactly what party they're from. We know exactly how many votes they won by. So if we have that mechanism honed, and then we know what those politicians stand for, which is another thing, the pledge could become a very interesting mechanism for any of these parties to actually use, to basically target constituency by constituency, because we're doing all the groundwork, so they don't have to. So if they're too busy to do groundwork, they can do all the research and build their little constituency offices and build a base in the local area, and then we can come in and say, okay, well, we've got 10,000 people in this area. We can encourage them to vote in a certain way, and it could be a very, very powerful tool for bringing that unity on the right.
Yeah.
Can we just go back to David's point a minute ago when he said, is Nigel taking those votes for granted? I think it's a great point, and I think David's right. I think Nigel was taking a calculated risk, and it was probably a decent gamble in his mind, and I understand his thought train. He's thinking, well, you know what? These peasants are going to vote for us anyway.
Yeah.
But the trick that he missed very evidently is that those peasants only amount to, I don't know what, 3 or 4 million people, probably the ones that voted for him last time around. The people that he's missing out on, the peasants that he's missing out on, are the millions of people that we can rally to get out there, register to vote. I must have 100 emails every week, people saying, Paul, I've done what you and Richard said, I've registered to vote. First time I'm ever going to vote in my life.
And they've signed the pledge.
They're going to go. They're going to go all apathetic again next time around. They go, I can't be bothered. EastEnders is on in a minute, and that again is a lack of street nous. That is again of lacking the understanding of the working man's psyche. Whilst he's drinking his Pims, our people will be getting out there and voting.
Yeah, and the thing is, the Elon Musk thing doesn't go away. I mean, I think it's going to be amazing, interesting on Inauguration Day. As sure as night follows day, Elon Musk and Nigel Farage will meet at some point, in that day, the day after, whatever. And I think that's going to be a very difficult moment. And the other thing is, and I'll put this scenario to you as well. That Elon obviously talks into Donald Trump's ear. He has access to Donald Trump. I mean, he's renting a villa at Mar-a-Lago. If Donald Trump's picking up some of this stuff from Elon Musk, I mean, how do you think? What would happen if, just theoretically saying, Tommy Robinson, when he gets released, got an invite to the White House? How would that work out?
Well, I'll be honest with you, David. I think that could happen.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
I think it might as well.
It's going to happen.
But
by the end of this year, Tommy Robinson will sit at the dinner table with Elon Musk at least.
Yeah.
At least.
And that's going to be some moment, because by that point, Elon Musk's then part of the Trump administration, the US government, Richard. And I think if that happened, that would have such a good impact, because it would, number one, it would totally boost Tommy Robinson's reputation and image, globally, I suppose. And it makes Nigel Farage's position kind of untenable.
I think it is. I think it is already. Can I? I want to read something here, right? Because it's one of Elon Musk's. I was going to say tweets, X's, whatever you call them now. One of posts. One of Elon Musk's posts from today, right? And I'm just going to read it. And he says this: "My British grandmother, Cora Amelia Robinson, remember that name, Cora Amelia Robinson, was an important part of my childhood. She was very strict, but also kind, and I could always count on her. She grew up very poor in England during the Great Depression, only to be bombed in World War II. To earn money for food, she cleaned houses, leaving with me a lasting respect for those who do so. My Nana was one of the poor working class girls with no one to protect her, who might have been abducted in present day Britain."
Yeah.
Now, think about that, guys. Think about that.
Have you seen his latest tweet? Have you seen his latest tweet 5 minutes ago?
No, go ahead, Paul. Tell us. Just
watching a David Vance show. Paul and David are brilliant, but I don't reckon much on the geezer with a beard.
He thinks I'm Nigel. That's the problem. No, but I mean, I think that tweet, in all seriousness, that tweet is very, very important. Powerful. Because what that shows is that Elon is emotionally invested in the UK, and he's emotionally invested in the British working class. So Elon is one of us. That's what he's saying there. He's saying, I identify with you. I am
one of that lot.
I am your kith and kin. That's what he's saying there, right? And that's really, really important, because that's why he's doing this. And and if anyone's missed that, again, like you said, Paul, there's no emotional intelligence with a lot of these toffs. They're not reading the room. They don't get it. They're in the little bubble, and that bubble's going to burst. And I can't wait till it bursts to see them all falling out the sky.
Well, I mean, when you look at people like Richard Tice, who I have been not very friendly with for quite a long time. I mean, I don't think these people have any emotional investment in the concerns of ordinary British people. I think they just posture and preen, and he's not very good at it. Nigel's better at it. He does a better act, I suppose you might say. But look, it's going to be very, very difficult for Nigel Farage. I know there'll be people who'll be thinking, well, this is such a shame because reform are really going somewhere. You know, 175,000 members, something like that. You know, so lots of, but 100. Well,
by the way, that counter has virtually ceased today.
See, that's interesting, Paul, because I was wondering what's going to happen to the counter. Yeah, because it shot up over Christmas.
If it could go backwards, I think it will be going backwards.
Well, you know,
I take no pleasure out of that personally, in the respect that I know Richard probably does. He's trying to keep a straight face, right?
I'm not even trying to keep a straight face, to be honest with you.
I tell you what I want. I want the same as what Tommy told me when I went to see him in prison. I want the best for our country.
Yeah.
When I say I don't care, of course I care. I care about every human being. I don't even want to see anything. You know, I don't hate Nigel Farage. I don't hate Richard Tice. They piss me off, but I don't hate them. They're human beings.
No, I don't either. I mean, it's not personal. It's not personal at all.
It's not personal. But I want what's best for our country. And even if that meant, and I know that I can say this quite safely without losing any respect from the man. Tommy says the same thing. It's not about him. It's not about me or Richard Tice or not. It's about it's about our kids. That's what it's about.
I mean,
we've got to get this right.
My position's very simple. It's never been about the vehicle. I don't care. I mean, okay, I'm in UKIP and I'm on the NEC, but I don't really care about party politics. It's higher than that. This is about saving our country. And you know, to me, if you're in the middle of the road and you're stopping us getting to where we need to go, we need to bring a crane and we need to pick you out the middle of the road,
get him out,
pick you up and gently just drop you to the side. And that's what needs to happen to Nigel. Nigel needs to get out of the road because there's a steam train coming and it's not going to stop for Nigel. He's got to get off.
What he needs to understand as well, guys, right, is that, again, you know, he's got to realise Tommy's not going away and he's not going to get any smaller.
Nope.
He's exploding.
Yep.
You know, he's absolutely exploding. I mean, he's reaching now almost to the point of, well, I don't know, what level can you talk about? I mean, he's...
Well, the movie, the documentary that Elon retweeted, I think, Richard, it's got 127 million, maybe
over
more.
150.
150 now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most seen documentary in history.
Absolutely. I mean, that is just incredible. That's just incredible. And
insane.
And
by the way, can I just say the judge ruled that wasn't in the public interest,
which tells you plenty. It tells you plenty. The reform of this country needs to be at every level, institutional, judicial, every level. But
when you think about what Tommy has actually done in releasing that film, and I'll be honest with you, can I be honest with you? I can be honest with you. I didn't think it was a great idea to put the film out. To be brutally honest with you, I thought, this is probably not a good idea, right? And the reality is that he called it right, and he's sitting there in prison, and he's not having an easy time. Let's get away from this idea. When you're in solitary confinement, and you could even tell there's a voice message. I don't know if you can get it up, Paul. The voice note he put on Twitter. Can you get that up and drop it in
tonight?
Yeah, can you? The one he's just
latest one tonight.
The latest one that Nem posted just
his reply.
Because I think people should hear that, because when you hear his voice, he's not gloating. He's not. See, Tommy's I'm not a nice guy. Tommy is a nice guy, right? So when I see bad things happen to bad people, I quite enjoy it. To be brutally honest with you, I know that's not a really good virtue, but Tommy's not like that. Tommy takes no pleasure in people being being hauled over the coals. But when you hear his voice, he's genuinely upset, and I think psychologically, he's under pressure. That's how I feel. I feel he's not in an ideal place. They're deliberately playing mind games with him. They've got these terrorism charges that are just about not giving his passcode up for his phone. They were trying. The police were interviewing him about some spat with some Daily Mail journalist. This is lawfare, and this is what people have got to understand. So all these, do you know, I get really angry when these establishment figures like Farage and Camilla Tominey and the little weird guy off GB News and GM, Dave, what's his name, Andrew Pierce or someone. Yeah, Andrew Pierce, and basically he's sitting there calling Tommy a racist and saying, "Oh well, he deserves to be in prison because of this, this, and this." They have no idea that Tommy has been completely stitched up by the establishment, and they're jumping through as many hoops as they can to find the slightest technicality.
Oh, Richard, you know what? I think some of them do have an idea, because if you look at the way the media's gone today, they've all had a team meet this morning.
Yep.
Right across the board, they've had a team meet. Let's make sure that we all stick to the same song sheet and slag Tommy off.
Yep.
Now,
there's a few that haven't played.
Yeah,
but the vast majority have. Do you want to hear this?
Yeah, if you can get it on, Paul, if we can play that.
Tell if you can hear it, okay, put your thumb up, Richard.
Yeah, let me know. Just play.
When you're in prison, small things are big things. And this isn't even a small thing. And they're big things because you sit and stew about them all day. And to say last week I was disappointed, or this week I've been disappointed with Nigel Farage is an understatement. But I've gone from disappointment to outraged, as he's now lied on national radio. He's made the allegation that I have a criminal conviction for violence against women.
Robinson's talked about this, but he has a criminal record, a list as long as your arm. Violence against women.
It's an out-and-out lie. Nigel's a big voice, a serious voice. He gets taken seriously. People believe what he says. And he, time and time again now this week, he took his opportunity to defame me, to slander me, to lie about me. And in a week where he sat, and I watched because he accused Kemi of lying about him, because Kemi said he played with a few numbers on his membership scheme. It's a bit of a different lie to making the ultimate accusation that I am violent against women. What's worse that he could have said? It's outrageous, Nigel. This is a lie. You know it's a lie. This isn't the first time. And you don't have to support me. I don't know why you keep sitting on TV and saying Tommy Robinson's not allowed to join Reform. I've not asked to join Reform. I never have. I'm doing my thing. All you had to say is he does his thing, we do ours. But you haven't. You've gone beyond that. You took the attack line. Some people are saying, well, he has to distance himself. You've not even tried to distance yourself. You're attacking me at a time when I don't have an opportunity to defend myself. At a time when I've sat on solitary confinement for telling the truth, Nigel. You say contempt. 153 million people have watched that film. They know I told the truth. And I made the decision to play that film, which I don't regret. And I'm in jail now for that, and I don't regret it. Because I actually do believe in free speech. I do stand by my values. I stand by my principles. So you don't have to support me. This isn't the first time. In my first contempt in 2017-18, when I was outside reporting on grooming gangs. I was put in jail then. And I watched as Nigel Farage justified my imprisonment. And then I was released because everything they'd done was unlawful. But he took the establishment line then. My terrorism case, which is coming up on March the 20th, which everyone's going to get to see. And when I was arrested for terrorism, so many reform members and supporters were demanding Nigel speak out against the abuse of power under terrorism legislation to detain a journalist and then charge me because I wouldn't give them access to my sources of information on my phone. It's outrageous. Nigel then said it was because of a passport. That's another lie. It'll be proven in the court case. And he's justified my treatment after playing my film Silence. And now this. Nigel, this is not fair. It's cowardly. I've made the attempt time and time again to say I don't want to be at war with Nigel Farage. I don't want to be going backwards and forwards with Nigel Farage. I don't want you to lie about me. I'm not saying you have to support me. Just stop lying about me. I was hoping that you, Reform, would be a voice for working class people who have been betrayed.
And then he gets cut off.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, I mean, having just heard that, I mean, I really think we should give Tommy Robinson the last word. I don't think any of us can follow that.
Can I say one thing, David? Can I say one thing? Nigel Farage today and Camilla Tominey, and this is really important, have viciously attacked and lied about a man who is in jail, who they know full well suffers from severe PTSD.
Yeah.
You can hear from Tommy's voice that he's stressed, he's upset. And when that phone went dead, do you know who he's got to speak to? Nobody.
Yeah.
What are they trying to do to this man and his family? What are they trying to achieve? Just think about that for a moment. What are they trying to achieve? And ultimately, if these people are not careful, what could they be responsible for? God, honestly.
I know. Richard, a final word from you, and then we're going to bring things to an end.
Well, I think that the emotion in Tommy's voice says everything. I mean, I know Tommy, and Tommy said to me, if anything ever happens to me in prison, I've been done in, because he's not that way inclined to do any harm to himself, right? So I don't think he's in danger of harming himself, but he is still very emotionally vulnerable. You can tell that by his voice.
Richard. They don't know that. They don't. We know it, but they don't.
Yeah, they don't care. And I think my message is this: we will not rest until Farage has left the scene. And I'm not wishing any harm to him or anything bad, but these people who are obviously part of the establishment, Tice, Yusuf, Farage, it's time to go. You know where the door is. You've been great players on the stage. Just leave.
Yeah. Well,
I'm really sorry, David. I know, have we got to round it up? I just want to say one
last
thing.
Make your point. It's okay. Make your point.
I said yesterday that I don't want to talk about Nigel Farage. I don't want to put him down. I don't want to speak badly about him. But every time he lies or talks about our friend who has given his all, there will be a response. So, Nigel, if you should get to see this, carry on. Allow Tommy to live rent-free in your head for as long as you like. Every time you mention him, there will be a response.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, look, it's been a really fascinating conversation, guys. Richard and Paul, thank you both so much. And Paul, thanks so much for sharing that very poignant voice note from Tommy. I'm sure everyone that watches this or listens to it on audio, whichever way, you can pick up the obvious emotion in Tommy Robinson's voice. And we should remember at the end of the day, this is a human being, human
being, exactly.
Yeah, and like all of us, we're men with feet of clay, all of us, and we can be susceptible to pressures and stresses and all of that stuff. So I'm very grateful, Paul, for sharing that with Tommy. Can I just to wrap things up? I mean, we don't know where this is going to go. As we say, this is series 1 in the Netflix British politics, and I'm not sure what series 2 is going to be like. But what I would say,
Richard gets taken out in the first episode.
Is that spoiler alert? Spoiler alert. But as I say, I mean, we've talked quite a bit about reform. We've talked about some of the positive influences, like say Ben Habib. So can I just finish by hoping that everyone who's watched this, if you want to come and support Ben Habib and hopefully you guys as well, we're going to be in London on Jan 30th. Here we are. If you come along to do that, as I say, it's very much all about the trying to hold together, uniting the kingdom. I should have called it that, actually, uniting the kingdom, because that's really what we want to do. And we do that by finding, I mean, I thought Tommy was incredibly generous in what he said, actually, during that little clip, Paul. Very generous given the circumstances. And I think it would be really good if we can come together then. And then I think, Richard, there's an event in London on the 1st of February?
1st of February, yeah, 1st of February. We'll be wanting people to gather about midday. I'm not going to give the location out yet. There's a couple of locations went out, but we'll give the proper location out for where the march starts very soon. And yeah, let's have an amazing start to the year with I think David's event will be fantastic. I just want all the viewers on my channels, because it's gone up to 2 of my channels, get to that. If you're coming to London on the Friday, because I know many of you stay over Friday night and go to the event on Saturday morning, come a day early and stay a day early. We'll put the location out. We went to the last one, absolutely fantastic. I'll tell you one thing about David. He knows how to put an event on. So get to it. It'll be great. The location's a good location. The beer's good, which is always a plus. Yeah, so get there.
I should have said there is a bar. There is a bar as well. So look, thanks very much, Richard, for that. Thank you, Paul, as well. Thank you both for your time. Thank you to all the people watching this on all the different platforms. I hope you find this interesting. I think it's been a good conversation, and it's all about, trying to get different perspectives out there, so you've got a clear perspective tonight. Right, folks, that's it from Richard, Paul, and myself for tonight, and it's good night.
Good night.